of the hour, and we come on the air as battle lines are being drawn between House Republicans and the Bidens, with the Republican-run House soon expected to vote to launch an impeachment inquiry against the president, while his son Hunter doesn't show up for a closed-door deposition on Capitol Hill. We have the next moves for both sides with our Hill and investigative teams. And something we haven't heard from the Fed in over a year, guess what? They may be getting ready to lower interest rates and make it cheaper for things like mortgages and car loans. What's driving that decision and why it helped drive the markets to record highs today? Then a living hell. That is how one UN leader is describing the conditions in Gaza today. Hallie is in Israel with the latest on the fighting, the humanitarian crisis, and families of hostages still holding out hope that their loved ones will be released. And Oprah reveals she's using a new weight loss drug. More on her fight to manage her weight and why it may not be a good idea to invite her over to dinner. That's a tease. Then the frightening video of a shark attack in Australia, how a beachgoer who thought he was recording his last moments actually managed to survive. Good evening, I'm Tom Costello, in for Hallie Jackson, who is on assignment, as you saw, in Israel right now. And any moment now, House lawmakers will start voting to formally begin an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. We're going to take a live look right here at the House floor. This vote, more of a formal step that House Republicans believe will help them better enforce their subpoenas and get the information they want for their investigation into what they say could be corrupt finances within the Biden family. Specifically, the business dealings of the president's son, Hunter, and what role the president played in those dealings. We know the Biden administration has repeatedly called this effort to an impeachment inquiry illegitimate. Here's what the White House press secretary said just a little bit ago.
There's no evidence here. There's none. They're doing political stunts.
Well, that's something that GOP leaders have gotten a lot of over the last few days, a lot of heat. The fact that right now they have not presented anything to prove misconduct by the president. Some of them have admitted that. A heated debate calling that out happened on the Hill earlier today. Take a listen.
Every single one of their crazy claims has been exhaustively debunked. Yet here we are.
What are my Democratic colleagues afraid of if there's nothing to see there?
So why is the MAGA wing of the Republican Party resorting to this political stunt? 2 words: Donald Trump.
Joe Biden has repeatedly lied to the American people.
The American people deserve transparency and accountability.
Well, all this is happening as one of the key figures in this impeachment inquiry, Hunter Biden, defied an order to testify behind closed doors about his business dealings. More on how that is unfolding a little bit later. But NBC's Hallie Vitale joins us now from the Hill. Hallie, how close of a vote might this be?
Look, it's going to be close, and that's because Republicans only just in the last few weeks have gotten enough together within their ranks to get the votes that they need to actually do this. We know that their majority for the entirety of this Congress, Tom, has been very slim. It got one slimmer with the ousting of Congressman George Santos, and now they can only afford to lose 2 votes. It's our understanding that they may only lose 1 at this point. Right now on the screen, you are seeing the House floor, but this is not the vote on opening an impeachment inquiry in a formal fashion. They've got a few other orders of business to tick through first, but then that'll be the last order of the day, and we do expect right now that it'll pass and the inquiry phase of this will officially be on.
Okay, so this vote would open the doors for House Republicans in their investigation. Talk about how this moves things forward, and then what happens?
Look, it's sort of a question of what's in a name, not to get Shakespearean or anything about what's going on in the House. But with an impeachment inquiry becoming official, they are allowed to, in the words of Republican leadership, better enforce some of their subpoenas. They know that a lot of these big asks, these big subpoenas, are probably going to get tied up in court. They even are citing the fact that Hunter Biden's attorney, Abby Lowell, has said this is not an official impeachment inquiry as a reason why they don't necessarily have to comply with the subpoena or the requests that they've been given. This basically means that the House is just going to try to shore up the foundations of their inquiry. But make no mistake, this is something that they have been investigating, Hunter Biden, the Biden family, since the very beginning of this Congress. From the moment that Republicans took the gavel, the goal was to try to tie President Biden to his family's business dealings. Despite the fact that they're opening this impeachment inquiry, they've actually yet to do that tying, and therein lies the rub for when they actually have to get into next year and decide, do they have enough to impeach the president, or do they effectively have to acquit him?
I think what you just said is critical, right? You got skeptics on both sides of the aisle on this impeachment inquiry, but you've got Republicans who have admitted they don't have any evidence. They see smoke, but they say we don't have any fire. So even if this inquiry gets approved in the House, senators are the ones who will be the jurors in a Senate trial. That seems like a high bar right now.
It is a high bar, and most of those senators have said they don't see a there, at least not yet. Some of them are supportive of the idea of continuing to investigate. Frankly, I've heard from some Republicans, especially those who are in leaning Biden districts, Tom, who might be voting for the impeachment inquiry phase to be opened, but who are not too keen on having to actually escalate this to impeachment, A, because that doesn't necessarily play in their districts, but B, because they are lacking the evidence that they actually need to substantively tie Joe Biden to his son Hunter's business dealings. When Hunter Biden came to the Hill, and I know you guys are going to get into this later in your show, he reiterated that his father was not involved with his financial business dealings. This is something that Republicans are seizing on. They're saying that he was specific in his word choice about saying financial dealings. Does that mean he left something else out? But what Hunter did here is try to make clear that he's willing to talk to the committee. He just doesn't want to do it behind closed doors because of the way that these words have been twisted by committee chairmen who already believe that they have enough to impeach the president, despite the fact that they don't.
You've queued this up nicely. Thank you, Hallie. Hallie Vitelli on Capitol Hill. So now let's go to the Hunter Biden story. House Republicans today promising to move forward with trying to punish Hunter Biden after he stood them up at a closed-door deposition on Capitol Hill this morning. The chairs of the committees involved say they will now move to bring contempt of Congress proceedings against the president's son. Take a listen.
We will begin looking at that. Both the lawyers for the Oversight Committee, the lawyers for the Judiciary Committee will move in that direction. But look, when Congress asks you to come, you're supposed to come and testify.
All right, those Republicans are reacting after Hunter Biden failed to show up for that deposition, with Hunter insisting he's willing to testify, but he wants to do it publicly so that everybody can hear what he says. Out of concern, the Republicans will distort his testimony if it's done in private. Hunter was speaking out anyway. He was right there on Capitol Hill, holding a press conference outside the building where lawmakers were waiting for him to testify, saying that nothing about his legal or personal struggles has anything to do with his dad.
My father was not financially involved in my business, not as a practicing lawyer, not as a board member of Burisma, not in my partnership with a Chinese private businessman, not in my investments at home nor abroad.
Well, contempt of Congress would, of course, only turn up the heat on Hunter. And let's be clear, he's facing federal tax and gun charges from two separate indictments in two different states. NBC's Tom Winter is following all of this for us. Tom, how much more legal hot water does defying the subpoena put him in? And, oh, by the way, some of those same members who are now suggesting he could be held in contempt, they defied subpoenas during the January 6th committee investigation last year.
Well, that's exactly right, Tom. And, you know, this issue is not something that had really come up much until the whole idea of defying subpoenas really came up in the course of that January 6th investigation. You're looking at several of them right now. Of course, we know Steve Bannon was charged as well as Peter Navarro. Ultimately, there were others that defied subpoenas, and then other arrangements were worked out or no charges were actually filed. I think it'll come down to the basic question of, is this person working with us? It's clear that Hunter Biden and his legal team are engaging in discussions, so it's not as if he was in California today surfing on the beach and just decided not to come to Washington at all. That good faith effort, at least, or at least the willingness to engage in the discussion may be what spares him from any criminal charges in the future. But I think any discussion of that is probably a long way off, Tom.
You know, it certainly seems as if Hunter Biden has been the target of a serious criminal investigation involving the FBI. But we saw a lot of the January 6th committee's work show up in the indictments of Donald Trump. So could this investigative work on the part of the folks on Capitol Hill right now, could it end up playing into federal charges against Hunter Biden?
Well, it's a critical question, Tom, and an important one for folks to consider, because the IRS criminal investigation, the criminal division, which opened up this investigation into Hunter Biden and his taxes, they've done all the work on that. But Special Counsel David Weiss, who brought those charges, both the gun charges in Delaware, and the charges involving tax in federal court in California, he says that the investigation is ongoing. And you've got those IRS agents saying, well, we weren't able to go as far as we wanted to in our investigation. So specifically to your point, and what might make this unique, is that if Congress continues to investigate, develop information through subpoenas, gets the type of records that haven't been seen before either by the IRS or by the FBI, does then that further inform a federal criminal investigation? We have no knowledge or understanding that there is an additional step here or a piece that we're missing. But then I guess I would say we have no knowledge or any sort of background on things that we're missing, because we wouldn't know about those either. So I think time will tell, Tom. This is a unique circumstance, and I think it's a reason why every time the committee comes out with new documents, we're certainly jumping into it. It'll be interesting to see if law enforcement joins in the pool, too.
Okay, Tom Winter, thank you very much. On Wall Street, did you see this? The Dow jumped to a record today on the Federal Reserve decision to leave interest rates alone after a year of aggressive inflation fighting, and its suggestion now that 3 interest rate cuts could be coming next year. The Dow closed above 37,000 points for the first time ever. The S&P and the NASDAQ both climbing over 1.3% to end the day. Now, the current interest rate is sitting at 5.25% to 5.5%. It is the highest in 22 years. It was the Fed's last policy decision of the year, just one day after new data showed inflation continues to ease slightly. NBC's Brian Chung has been on Fed Watch today. Brian, the Fed was widely expected to hold rates where they are. They did. But what about this forecast of rate cuts? That seemed to be more explicit than we expected, right? And second of all, what impact will this have on everyday Americans?
Yeah, and we heard from the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell that a lot of policymakers, he's not the only one, see the case for perhaps having already made their final interest rate hike earlier in the year. There's been a number of consecutive meetings, including this afternoon's, where they decided not to raise interest rates, just to see how, if they keep it this high, what will that do to getting inflation down? Now you have these economic projections coming from the Federal Reserve itself, forecasting the possibility of 3 interest rate cuts at some point next year. Again, those are forecasts. It depends on how the numbers come in. But this is the first real recognition since the Federal Reserve began aggressively raising interest rates that they could cut rates. Now, what does that mean for the average American? It's not directly, but it does have indirect ties to mortgage rates and then also your credit card rates, which have been at really high levels. Mortgage rates going up from 3% to 8%. But because of the state of the economy right now, having avoided a recession, the Federal Reserve is saying, well, we might be confident that we can get those rates a little bit lower and keep the trajectory of this strong economy going, Tom.
You know, what about the Fed's goal of a 2% inflation rate? I mean, we're now at about 3.1%, well below the 9% rate we had 18 months ago, but 3.1% down to 2%. Can we get there, or is the Fed starting to think we're getting close enough?
Yeah, well, again, we have to recognize that the Federal Reserve is looking at the numbers that we got yesterday as part of their marching orders to get inflation down. Unemployment looks really good. It's been hovering at around 50-year lows, but this is the number that they want to get down to 2%. You can see the improvement that we've made since last year. It actually was as high as 9% in the summer of last year. But even though it's been hovering around 3% for the past few months, there is concern within the Federal Reserve that the last mile, getting it down to their target of 2%, is going to be the hardest. That's why the Federal Reserve and Jay Powell are saying, well, we can hold rates here. We might even be able to cut them, but it depends on whether or not that figure gets down to 2%. Their projections say they could get there, but it might take a couple of years, Tom.
Real quickly, Brian, you used to work at the Fed, so I'm going to ask you this. Is that 2% goal, is it squishable? In other words, will they say, we're getting close enough to 2.5%, we're good?
Yeah, well, the way that the Federal Reserve thinks about this is that they are averaging it over time. So if they hit it 2% in one report, that might not be good enough either. They might look at a 12-month average, for example, and say, we want to see that 2% sticking around that target. But it doesn't have to be 1.8. It doesn't have to be 2.2. They want to see it averaging 2% over time.
Yeah. Brian, thank you. Brian Chung. Now to the Middle East. And tonight, Israel is rejecting the growing pressure on the world stage to stop or at least pause the intense bombardment it is carrying out inside Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu late today vowed to fight until the very end in Gaza, as a top UN leader now says it's, quote, a living hell inside Gaza. There is no food left, even for people who have money to buy it. Our team on the ground has gone inside a tent city in Gaza where thousands of people are trying to survive. One woman tells our team medicine for her elderly mother is running out, with no sign of when the violence could end.
I came here, I'm trying to find these medicines for my mother. I couldn't find any one of them. I just searched every place to find it.
Meanwhile, back here in Washington, President Biden met privately with the families of 8 American hostages held by Hamas, with no sign right now if or when more hostages could be released. Let's bring in Hallie Jackson, who is on the ground in Tel Aviv. Hallie, we're trying to mind the show for you here, but what more do we know about the conditions inside Gaza right now? You've been on the ground, heavy rain, it's cold, really adding to the misery, right?
Yeah, for sure, Tom. And it's great to have you back there in Washington. There is such a nexus, of course, to what's happening in Washington and what's happening here in Israel. But as you're asking about Gaza, you showed some of these images that our team is gathering there. And it's difficult, right? Because the international press largely is unable to go into Gaza to see some of this firsthand and to be able to bring more of those images back to an international audience. But one of the things that we do understand from outside aid organizations is that the situation is just getting worse, basically by the day. You mentioned it's gross, right? It's muddy, it's rainy, it's uncomfortable for people who are already hungry. Half the population is estimated to be starving, according to international aid groups. I want to play for you something that our team heard from one of the families who's living in Gaza. Listen.
Why are our children not like the rest of the world's children? What is their difference from us? We are human beings.
It is a desperate situation there. You have the Hamas-run health ministry estimating that more than 18,000 Gazans have been killed since this war began after that Hamas terror attack on October 7th. You now have the ministry also saying that vaccinations for children have sold out. They have run out. And that is as we're hearing warnings from the World Health Organization and others that disease is spreading. You talked about the living hell quote that's getting so much attention. There's also another from the UN Palestinian refugee chief who says civil order is breaking down. And I'm struck that he talked about how he's interacting with his own staff who's working in these shelters. He said he asked one of his staffers, how do you handle that, being at a shelter like this? And this staffer told him, I find a quiet corner to go into about 10 times a day and cry. I mean, that is the level of severity of the situation of what's happening in Gaza, Tom.
And still no sign at all that diplomacy to pause the fighting, to get hostages out, is going anywhere right now. And oh, by the way, the Israeli Defense Forces are now flooding the tunnels that Hamas uses and where some hostages might be.
That's right. Flooding the tunnels, potentially destroying them as well. This is what we've heard just late today in some of these briefings and other backgrounders from officials who are familiar with this through the IDF and the military. President Biden himself has talked about this and said he had received assurances that no hostages were in the tunnels where that was happening, but he has not obviously seen evidence of that for himself or seen it for himself. But the military apparatus is in full force in Gaza. And in fact, the IDF, the Israeli military, has talked about a number of its troops having been killed, including 9 members of the elite brigade, the elite Golani brigade, specifically as part of the Israeli military. On the diplomatic side, listen, the key phrase that you said is the words right now. No, right now we are not seeing anything concrete to move towards talks. However, the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, will be here in Israel in just about 48 hours from now, having high-level conversations with the War Cabinet, with the Israeli Prime Minister and others. The Defense Secretary will be in the region, we know, visiting Qatar, which The Qataris have been critical in negotiating that truce previously that we saw a couple of weeks ago. There is a sense, we talked about the idea of people being desperate. Israelis, some of them are desperate. Those family members of hostages, 135 of them believed to still be held in captivity, who so very much want their families out ASAP, urgently, partly because they're concerned, of course, about their health. I spoke with one woman, we'll talk about this later in the show, who believes her sister is injured in captivity, but also because of the international pressure right now to try to get to some kind of a diplomatic temporary ceasefire here. Think about what's coming up, the holidays, right? New Year. There may be a concern that interest could start to wane. And you heard at the White House one of those family members who met with President Biden saying, I am hoping for a Christmas miracle. That is something that people are feeling there, those family members of hostages, Tom.
Hallie, we're lucky to have you on the ground there. Thank you. Hallie Jackson will be checking back with you later in this hour. Other news now, the stage is set for a high-stakes legal battle over reproductive care, with the Supreme Court today agreeing to hear arguments over access to a widely used abortion medication. The court's ruling could lead to a definitive decision on whether mifepristone, that's the pill most commonly used for medication, or at least for abortions, whether it will continue to be easily available, including by mail. Now, mifepristone is used to terminate unwanted pregnancies, and it's also used to care for women going through a miscarriage. NBC's Laura Jarrett is joining us now. Laura, remind us about the details of this case, because it doesn't directly address anything about a woman's right to abortion, right?
That's right, Tom. It's really about whether the FDA did its job in evaluating the drug's safety profile. And in this case, a group of advocates sued, saying, look, the FDA really just didn't do enough to make sure that the drug was safe. And a federal judge actually agreed with him in Texas, and the judge tried to take the pill off the market. But eventually, the case wound up at the Supreme Court, and they said, hold on a minute, let's pause everything, have this case work through its normal process in the lower federal courts, and then you can come back to us. That's why the pill is currently on the market, because the Supreme Court put a pause on it, put a stay. Now that the case is sort of wound through the courts, if you will, Tom, the issues have narrowed substantially. And really, as you laid out, what now the court is looking at is whether you can get the pill by mail, whether women can use it later into their pregnancies, whether you have to have a doctor prescribe it. All the things that the FDA did to try to make the pill easier to get, that's what the Supreme Court is looking at now.
Okay, well, a ruling is not expected until June of next year, but this Supreme Court, with a 6-3 Republican majority, is the same court that overturned Roe. What impact could the eventual ruling have on abortion access and the FDA's authority to approve these drugs?
The implications are far-reaching. It's why the Biden administration is paying so close attention to this, because they're saying if an advocacy group full of doctors, that's who's sued here, who do not want to use mifepristone, these are doctors who are completely against it. If they can sue over this, then they can sue over anything. And I think that's why so many people are watching this who might be interested in it for regulatory reasons, Tom. And also the timing here is huge, right? The court is going to decide this case, likely hand out its decision, as it always does in the big cases, the last week of June, which means it is going to fall smack dab in the middle of a presidential election season with, I think, potentially far-reaching implications for the country.
Yeah. Laura Jarrett, thank you very much for that.
Sure.
Back here on the nation's highways, nearly every Tesla on American roads, every Tesla getting a crucial software update after the car maker agreed to recall millions of its vehicles over a federal investigation into its self-driving autopilot feature. A National Highway Traffic Safety Administration investigation found that the so-called auto steer feature was not designed properly to prevent drivers from misusing it, not keeping their attention on the road, and therefore not prepared to take action to avoid a crash. Tesla agreed to implement a recall in the form of a free software update affecting more than 2 million vehicles, almost every car they made for American drivers, stretching back more than a decade. The investigation into Tesla, launched more than 2 years ago, focused on hundreds of crashes where investigators believe autopilot was in fact involved. This isn't even the first Tesla autopilot-related recall of the year. Hundreds of thousands of vehicles required an update back in February, addressing their full self-driving mode feature. CNBC's Laura Kolodny is joining us now. First of all, let's talk through what safety analysts are talking about. I talked to one today who said, listen, the bottom line, many Tesla drivers were taking their hands and their eyes off the road, relying on autopilot and auto steer. So talk about what the software update will do. And you don't have to go to your dealer to get it, right? It's going to come to you over the internet.
That's right, Tom. It's an over-the-air software update, which means they can improve the fleet right away as soon as they know how to. And what we know so far is that Tesla plans to roll out larger notifications on the touch screen to show whether auto steer is on or off. That was confusing for some drivers. It will lock drivers out if they're not using autopilot and auto steer responsibly. But the company hasn't given a lot of other details on what else it might do to ensure those systems are safe for their customers and all the other road users.
And I understand Tesla today, and who knows if this was actually Elon Musk, essentially saying that they're going to be adamant about going forward with these safety upgrades. But he says anecdotal stories of crashes are not hard data points, and hard data suggests that, in fact, autopilot is safe.
If Tesla wants to convince the world its vehicles are safe, they need to share that data for third-party validation, and they haven't done that. Automotive safety researchers are actually saying it's not enough, what they've committed to so far. They want Tesla to implement geofencing to limit the use of autopilot to the roads where the company knows that it's been designed for use. And they're asking for Tesla to admit there was a defect because Tesla has not agreed with NHTSA's findings yet.
Good intel right there. Third-party verification. Laura, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Coming up from us, a new study suggests social media can make existing problems worse for kids, but it's not all bad news. What parents can do to help make it a positive place. Plus, a scandal surrounding a big political couple in Florida, rocking the state's GOP there. We're getting back into the blowback in our original tonight. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, and a new report just out today is offering a sort of toolkit for parents on how to make social media a helpful, not a harmful space for their teens. The National Academy of Sciences study highlights what we know, that social media can be bad for kids. But what's interesting here is it also shows it can be good if done in a positive way. For example, scrolling and linking is connected to comparing yourself with others, and that may not be healthy. But posting about hobbies or creative projects can be good, giving teens a place to express and showcase what they are interested in. Let's bring in NBC's tech reporter, Jake Ward, for more on this. Jake, this report is interesting, right? Because we're used to saying, oh boy, this is bad stuff for your kids. But the social media flat out, there are some exceptions, and it can be taken in a different way.
That's right. I mean, the big takeaways here are very interesting because this is not a clear, warning against, knocking all adolescents off of social media forever, Tom. This is truly a place that's trying to say that there are some ways to fight the negative effects, that, in fact, some social media styles are better than others. As you mentioned, posting can, in fact, be beneficial to self-esteem, whereas passive scrolling can be bad. Now, this is not true for everybody, and what's really important about this study is that it really points out the the many, many different types of families, different types of backgrounds where these sorts of effects show up in very different and sometimes opposite ways. The big thing here, Tom, is that they just say we need more information from inside these social media companies. These researchers lament the idea that they really can't come to some hard and fast rules until these companies open up their data sets and show them exactly what this is doing to kids.
Jake, you and I both have daughters, and I got to say, I was concerned about it when they were in middle and high school because it can be such a cesspool with, immediately kids being beat up on by the bully in school. And maybe it's all about isolating your own particular friend group, keeping it small and tight, and you know who they are and they know who you are? I don't know. What should parents do?
Yeah, I mean, parents, do have, you got to dig pretty deep into this because the researchers say that we cannot establish hard and fast rules yet, but they do say that there are some takeaways. I mean, there's some really interesting things when you weigh the pros and cons across what this report suggests. I mean, for instance, it basically says, if anything is being displaced, good sleep, good habits with your friends, good health when you eat, Those things are things to walk for. And if there's a problem already, depression, anxiety, body dysmorphia, it's going to make that stuff worse. What's really interesting here, Tom, is that young kids, you can be really restrictive with them, and that seems to work pretty well. But older kids, you got to start giving them a little more independence, communicate transparently what you expect of them, and that's the only way to keep them from going to the wrong parts of social media, Tom.
Yeah, and it can be so destructive. A lot of parents care about this deeply. Jake, thanks very much. All right, let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you might want to know about tonight. Number 1, the father of the accused Highland Park shooter was released from jail today. Remember, Robert Cremo Jr. pleaded guilty last month to 7 counts of reckless conduct for helping his son purchase a gun. In exchange, he was sentenced to about 2 months in jail and probation, but he only ended up serving less than a month because of good behavior. Number 2, federal prosecutors say they will retry a former police officer charged in the raid that killed Breonna Taylor. It comes about a month after a judge declared a mistrial when the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict on civil rights violations. Brett Hankinson is accused of using excessive force when he blindly fired 10 shots into Taylor's apartment. A trial date is set for next October. Hankinson could face up to life in prison if convicted. Number 3, government ministers from nearly 200 countries came to a historic deal at the end of COP28, calling for a transition away from fossil fuels. The proposal requires greenhouse gas emissions to be at net zero by 2050 and for renewable energy capacity globally to be tripled by 2030. Number 4, Turkey's Soccer Federation said today matches will resume December 19th. Remember, yesterday they suspended all games after a club president punched a referee and put him in the hospital. Number 5, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin reached a tentative deal with the parent company of the NBA's Washington Wizards and the NHL's Washington Capitals to move both teams out of the capital. They will now play in Alexandria, Virginia, instead of D.C. Now, the move will reportedly come with a brand new entertainment district along with a new arena and a corporate headquarters, and folks in D.C. are upset about what that will mean for downtown D.C. When we come back, Hallie Jackson's joining us live from Tel Aviv again with an inside look at what people are calling Hostage Square and the diplomatic push to get those hostages, including Americans, freed. Plus, now a hiker in Hawaii says he survived a 1,000-foot fall from a trail. First responders calling it a miracle. We'll have his survival story later coming up in The Local. We're going back overseas right now. NBC's Hallie Jackson is getting a close-up look at a plaza in Tel Aviv, now called Hostage Square, where folks there are gathering, holding out hope more hostages could get released as the diplomatic push to make that happen is still stalled, it appears, tonight. Hallie is back with us. Hi, Hallie.
Hey, Tom, it's great to see you. One of the things that is striking when you visit this location is the way that it has become a gathering spot for family members of hostages, for people in Israel, in Tel Aviv, affected by the war to come, and to be with other people who are feeling this moment, too. Take a look. A near constant vigil next to pictures of the killed or kidnapped, as this has become a gathering place. This is the plaza in front of the Tel Aviv Art Museum, but people here now call this place Hostage Square. At the center, an empty Shabbat table. Nearby, a menorah for Hanukkah, a holiday celebrating a miracle with so many hoping for one soon.
I feel like they're my family.
Like Yarden Gonen, showing us to a dark tent filled with pictures of people who'd been at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th.
You can see also my sunshine here. This is Romy, my beautiful sister, one of them.
Romy's believed to be held captive in Gaza, along with dozens of others, including multiple Americans, some of their families meeting with President Biden at the White House today. If you could be there to speak on behalf of your sister, what would you tell him?
First of all, that she's my loved sister. This is what's important right now, to fight for their life, for the living. And I believe in him. I believe in his power. And we all know that he got the leverage on Qatar, on Egypt, on Israel. to change the way things are right now. And I'm seeking for his help. And I know we all are, especially the families that they have citizenship in the United States, but also us.
Gonen says other now freed hostages told them her sister's alive, but hurt after being shot in the hand. The push to get her home so urgent. It's now Gonen's full-time job.
I'm very afraid that the ones that holding her are a group of terrorists that want to use her and another women and men that over there as a war weapon. And I can only hope that she's okay mentally. And I feel her here.
Yeah.
I want to feel her here, please.
One of the things about that place that we just showed you, Hostage Square, on Saturday nights, there is a bigger vigil, and there are so many people. There are hundreds of people. There's video screens, and the last couple of Saturdays, in fact, since those hostages that Gonen just referenced have been released, you've actually heard some video testimonials from them, these people who had been in captivity now speaking about that experience, and perhaps most importantly, as they emphasize, delivering the message, please get the others out. That is such a focus for these folks, Tom.
That was such a compelling and a personal interview. You've covered this war, of course, from here, from the anchor chair in Washington since it started. Yeah. Talk about what it's like now to be on the ground and to be there firsthand in Tel Aviv.
I will say, Tom, just putting on sort of my D.C. hat as well, one of the things that's been striking as a sort of political correspondent coming in now to cover this war in Israel, between Israel and Hamas, is the way that so many Israelis that we've talked to are incredibly engaged with what's happening in the D.C. political landscape, incredibly engaged with everything that President Biden is saying, where Secretary of State Tony Blinken is, when are these visits happening by top U.S. officials to this region, because I think there are people here who have said to me they feel like the U.S. has a lot of power in this situation. I think you heard Yarden, who you see here now next to me, talk about that, too, in our interview here, the idea that the U.S. could potentially have some leverage here in trying to get people to the negotiating table in order to try to come up with some kind of a temporary truce, another one to get some of these hostages freed. So that has been one of the striking things here. I'm also looking ahead to what's going to happen later this week, Tom, when we expect to see President Biden's top national security official, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, come here to Israel to talk with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to talk with members of the Unity War Cabinet. Interestingly, he's also in Saudi, and what we have heard now from our colleagues over on our White House team is that Sullivan is really trying to make the case that this should not escalate into a broader regional conflict, trying to make sure that this war doesn't escalate even further in the region. And Tom, as you well know, that has been one of the concerns since almost the minute this war began.
Yeah. Hallie, we'll be back with you at the top of the hour. Thank you very much. Great reporting. NBC News covers hundreds of stories each day and is awfully tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them. So our bureau teams have done it for you and for me. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions. We call it the local. From our Western Bureau, federal prosecutors have charged 2 men in Montana for going on a years-long killing spree. Listen to this, killing bald and gold eagles. They say the 2 men sold them on the black market. The birds are protected under federal law, and selling them is illegal. The men face up to 5 years in prison and thousands of dollars in fines if convicted. Out to our Midwest Bureau, a Chicago man who spent 35 years in prison for a murder he did not commit is walking free today after a federal judge vacated his conviction and dismissed all the charges. The state AG's office is calling it a significant step towards justice. 57-year-old Brian Beals says he's, quote, ready to begin life again. And from our Western Bureau, a hiker says it's a miracle that he's alive after falling about 1,000 feet off a waterfall in Hawaii. Rescuers found him 3 days later using a video he'd posted before he fell. The hiker has a black eye, some cuts, some bruises, broken bones, but he is expected to be okay. Well, Oprah Winfrey has revealed that she uses a weight loss drug as part of her new approach to maintaining a healthy diet. She does not say which drug. In an exclusive interview with People, Winfrey says, I now use it as I feel I need it, as a tool to manage, not yo-yoing. She says she's used it before Thanksgiving. So in her words, instead of going and gaining 8 pounds like I did last year, I gained half a pound. It quiets the food noise, she says. And it's not just that. She still maintains this holistic mindset. She eats her last meal at 4 p.m., drinks a gallon of water a day, and uses the Weight Watchers principles of counting points. Let's bring in NBC's Valerie Castro for more on this. Valerie, Oprah's weight has been heavily scrutinized for decades. So why does she now decide she needs to come out? What was behind her decision to talk about this?
So, Tom, in making this decision, Oprah says she had to overcome a lot of shame, and she also had to overcome the idea that she was somehow cheating herself because she wasn't able to do this through willpower alone. In the interview, she says the fact that there is a medically approved prescription for managing weight and staying healthier in my lifetime feels like relief, like redemption, like a gift, and not something to hide behind and once again be ridiculed for. I'm absolutely done with the shaming from other people, and particularly myself. And Tom, as you noted, this is not the only thing that she is doing. This is just part of a larger plan as far as diet and exercise, as well as using this as a tool to maintain that healthy weight.
You know, back in September, she called the drugs an easy way out, and now she seems to have kind of changed her mind, right? So how does this kind of represent the evolving industry and acceptance for using these drugs? I mean, if Oprah is doing it, it must be safe. I'm hearing people think that right now.
Right. So Oprah also addressed this directly in the interview. She said, I realized I'd been blaming myself all these years for being overweight, and I have a predisposition that no amount of willpower is going to control. Now, she has embraced that, as well as Weight Watchers, and we know that she is a longtime spokesperson for the company. She's been a member of the board since 2015. She's also an investor. And earlier this year, Weight Watchers made headlines when they acquired a digital health company called Sequence. Now, that's a subscriber-based plan. It gives people the option to have access to clinical providers, to nutrition experts, to fitness experts, as well as medical experts that can prescribe some of these weight loss drugs like Wegovy and Ozempic. And Weight Watchers, the CEO spoke to CNN in an interview earlier this year saying, look, they've come around to the idea that this is a holistic approach, that it can't just be willpower and a traditional diet that helps people. Some people need medical help as well. And take a listen to what she had to say.
So I want to be the first to say I'm sorry. And we know better now. We will do better now. For many who are living with obesity, it's a chronic condition, and therefore it is not a choice. We've been treating these medications like it's a vanity, and it's not. It's life-saving.
And Tom, for a lot of people, the hope is that this becomes a sustainable way of managing weight. Tom?
You know, when Oprah Winfrey, who is so successful, says, I didn't have the willpower to overcome the cravings, that allows them to say, all right, if Oprah's going to use the medications, maybe I can too. This is really insightful and helpful. Valerie, thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right, we now want to get you to the original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. Tonight, a sex scandal involving one of Florida's most powerful political couples. It's rocking the state's GOP. One half of that powerful couple, the chair of Florida's Republican Party, now faces allegations of sexual battery. The other half, his wife, co-founded the influential parents group Moms for Liberty, serves on a school board, and both refuse to step down. NBC's Noah Pransky has the story.
Hey, ho, ho! Bridget Ziegler's got to go. Hey, hey!
Outrage, both outside.
She has turned this school board into a circus.
And inside.
It is the distraction du jour.
A Sarasota County School Board meeting with critics calling for the resignation of board member and co-founder of Moms for Liberty, Bridget Ziegler.
The resolution recommends that Bridget Ziegler immediately take all steps necessary to voluntarily resign.
The non-binding vote passed.
I am disappointed.
Ziegler did not resign. But why is this such a big deal? Ziegler co-founded Moms for Liberty, a parents group aggressively pushing for more conservative policies in schools, including bans on some books and lessons related to certain race, gender, and sexuality issues. She's also married to the chair of the Republican Party of Florida, Christian Ziegler, who now faces allegations of sexual battery, including rape. But Bridget isn't accused of any legal wrongdoing.
The blowback has generally, for her, been sort of steeped in the idea that she's being a hypocrite, and that is because the allegations of the sex scandal are that there was a threesome, and a threesome that involves another woman.
The Florida Center for Government Accountability first reported the alleged rape described in a search warrant affidavit. It details what was supposed to be a consensual three-way encounter that included Bridget. But it says when Bridget canceled, Christian went to the victim's house anyway. Sarasota police have not confirmed or denied the authenticity of the detailed affidavit, which has been widely reported. But last month, police provided NBC News a heavily redacted report mentioning rape and sexual battery when asked for a complaint filed against Ziegler. Christian Ziegler's lawyer says Sarasota police are investigating, but his client is innocent. Ziegler has not been charged. Bridget Ziegler, meanwhile, who did not return NBC News' request for comment, has tried to conduct business as usual these last few weeks.
I serve on another public board, and this issue did not come up, and we were able to forge ahead with the business of the board.
But the scandal has rocked the Florida GOP, with some calling on Governor Ron DeSantis to use his executive power to remove Bridget from boards.
And it's had some huge political ripple effects here that the party is still figuring out how to kind of deal with.
Moms for Liberty says Bridget stepped down as co-founder years ago, but, quote, has remained an avid warrior for parental rights, adding that the allegations against Christian should be fully investigated. DeSantis, who endorsed Bridget for the Sarasota School Board, has not yet commented on whether she should resign, but publicly urged her husband to step down as party chair. Now, some of the state's top Republicans have called an emergency meeting this weekend to discuss potential disciplinary actions against him. With neither Ziegler indicating any plans to step down, the future remains in limbo both for this power couple and the Republican Party of Florida.
Noah Pransky joins us now. Noah, I was in Sarasota this weekend. It is the talk. It is the talk in Sarasota. And you said the future is in limbo. So what are the next steps here?
So for Mr. Ziegler, the Republican Party of Florida can remove him, but it won't be quick. It will take several meetings and procedures. As for Mrs. Ziegler, she can be removed using executive power from the governor. He has not yet indicated if he would, but she doesn't just serve on the Sarasota School Board. She also serves on the new Disney Oversight Board. She was personally appointed by the governor. However, she has not been accused or charged. So right now, we're just waiting. Tom?
Right. Noah, thank you very much. Noah Pransky. We are taking a live look at the House voting now on beginning impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Plus, a terrifying moment caught on video of the aftermath of a shark attack, the latest on this man's injuries, and what paramedics in Australia are telling NBC News how he survived. Coming up next. We're back with breaking news. Lawmakers are voting on a formal impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Let's bring in NBC's Sahil Kapoor, who's on Capitol Hill right now. And Sahil, before you do that, we're going to a special report. Stand by.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good day, everyone. We're coming on the air with breaking news on Capitol Hill, where the House just voted 221 to 212 to formalize the impeachment inquiry into alleged wrongdoing by President Biden. To be clear, the president has not been impeached. This is a vote to start an investigation into whether he should be. House Republicans are accusing the president of profiting from his family's business dealings while in office. But so far, they have not presented any solid evidence of wrongdoing. At the heart of the inquiry, the president's son, Hunter, who's been in other legal hot water for failing to pay taxes on time and on gun charges. Today, Hunter Biden was supposed to appear at a closed-door deposition related to the impeachment inquiry, but defied a congressional subpoena and instead spoke to reporters on Capitol Hill, where he defended his father, telling reporters, "My father was not financially involved in his business." We want to go to NBC's Ryan Nobles on Capitol Hill. Ryan, to repeat, this is a vote to open an inquiry into the possibility of achievement. Did Republicans have to have any evidence to reach this point?
Only in the fact, Lester, that they needed to convince their members to vote yes on a measure like this to move this process forward. It's important to keep in mind that this impeachment inquiry was actually already underway. It was launched by the former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy back in September, but he did so without this formal authorization from his fellow members of the House of Representatives. And that did lead to some level of difficulty for the three House committees that are investigating the current president and his family, and that includes the House Judiciary Committee, the House Ways and Means Committee, and the House Oversight Committee. They have been in the process of subpoenaing documents, compelling witnesses to testify, and collecting information as a part of this investigation. And they've run into some trouble with some of their targets who have suggested that they do not need to comply because the full House had yet to formalize the impeachment inquiry like they did tonight. Now, the chief target among the many witnesses that the House committees are asking to come forward and speak is the president's son, Hunter Biden. And he was scheduled to testify today in a closed-door deposition. Hunter Biden went back and forth with the committee for several weeks, suggesting that he would testify, but only in a public setting. Well, the House Oversight Committee had said that in order for their investigation to work the way they wanted it to, that they first wanted to depose Hunter Biden in a closed-door setting where they could ask him a lengthy amount of questions in a setting that couldn't turn into a circus atmosphere like these public hearings often do. That wasn't good enough for Biden and his legal team, who in fact cited the fact that the impeachment inquiry had not been voted on by the entire House and said that they were not going to comply. Hunter Biden came here to Capitol Hill today, did not participate in this closed-door hearing, but instead gave a short statement, did not answer any reporter questions, and specifically denied that his father had any financial connection to his business dealings around the world or his legal practice. Now, the House Republicans have said that they are now willing to take the step of holding the president's son in contempt of Congress because of his unwillingness to comply with the subpoena. They will now have more legal weight to make that claim based on this authorization vote that just took place here tonight. Lester?
All right, Ryan, we'll ask you to stand by. Let me bring in senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. He's at the White House. Gabe, any word from the president or his team reacting to the vote? Clearly, it appeared earlier in the day the numbers were there to carry this.
Lester, good evening. The White House is referring to this as a baseless political stunt and arguing that Republicans should be focused on other priorities, such as passing aid to Ukraine and Israel. They continue to say that these are baseless allegations. Now, earlier today, the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, was asked whether the president had the opportunity to see his son Hunter's remarks outside of the Capitol. She wouldn't get much into that, but she did say that the president was familiar with what his son planned to say. But she would not say much more than that, only reiterating that the president and the first lady were proud of their son for continuing to rebuild his life. Lester.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez at the White House. Thank you. That concludes this NBC News special report. Much more ahead on our streaming network, NBC News Now, online at NBCnews.com. And tonight, I'll see you with more on Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt. Thank you for watching, everyone. Good evening.
As Lester said, NBC News Now is staying on the story, and we just saw House lawmakers vote to formalize Republicans' impeachment inquiry into President Biden. House Republicans see this as a way to help them better enforce subpoenas and get information they want for their investigation into what they call corrupt finances within the Biden family, specifically the business dealings of the president's son, Hunter, and what role the president played, if at all, in them. Sahil Kapoor is on Capitol Hill. All right, Sahil, where does this go from here?
Well, Tom, the vote was 221 to 212. Every Republican voted to formalize this impeachment inquiry. Every Democrat who was present voted against it. One Democrat was absent. This continues the investigation that Republicans opened back in September through a unilateral move by then Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Now they're voting to formalize it so that the subpoenas as part of their investigation have more weight so they can be enforced in court. And to that end, I have a new statement from Speaker Mike Johnson in defense of this move to open the impeachment inquiry, calls it a critical step in the investigation into, quote, serious matters involving President Joe Biden. He goes on to say that Biden continues to stonewall lawful congressional subpoenas and that they take the responsibility to continue the investigation. It bears mentioning, Tom, that they have not found any evidence, Republicans have not, to directly connect President Biden to the activities and the misdeeds of his son Hunter Biden, about whom these investigations mostly focus. This has been an investigation that they've been pursuing for a long time now, many months, through various committees. They formalize it through the context of an impeachment inquiry, or I guess opened an impeachment inquiry back back in September. Now it can move forward through the enforcement of several subpoenas. Just today, perhaps not coincidentally, Hunter Biden was on Capitol Hill. He talked about his own situation here, accused Republicans of telling lies about him, accused the so-called MAGA right of trying to drag his father into it, and said, quote, "My father was not financially involved in my business, not as a practicing lawyer, a board member of Burisma in his partnership with a Chinese private businessman, or his investments at home or abroad, certainly not as an artist," trying to make a clear distinction between his own problems, his own addiction, his own clear misdeeds on which he's under federal indictment, and the actions of his father.
Yeah, interestingly, I also heard a member of the committee say today that so far they don't have any evidence that President Biden committed high crimes or misdemeanors, which is the level that you need to achieve to be convicted of or to be impeached anyway, right? So you've got Republican members themselves saying they see a lot of smoke, they think smoke, but they admit they don't have enough for a conviction, and they don't even see any illegalities at this point on behalf of the president.
And some of one of the words you just used, Tom, was identical to what Chip Roy, the Texas Republican congressman, told me just a few moments ago while the House was voting. I asked him, you're voting to formalize this impeachment inquiry. Are you ready to vote to impeach President Biden? And he said no, because he has not seen the evidence. He said there's a lot of smoke. He said when there's a lot of smoke, he presumes there's a fire. They have not found that fire. They've been searching for a long time and not found that fire. This simply takes this investigation to the next level in search of that fire. Right now, if there were to be a vote in the House of Representatives to actually impeach President Biden, it would not have nearly enough votes to succeed because many Republicans are skeptical. The question is, will they come around? Will they find any evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors, Tom?
Sahil, you answered my question. Would this pass in the House? Thank you very much. That is a wrap for us at this hour. Coverage, however, on News Now picks up right now. Top of the hour once again as we come on the air. A battle line is being drawn, actually multiple lines, between House Republicans and the Bidens. The House voting in just the last few minutes, as you heard, to launch an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Well, his son Hunter doesn't show up for a closed-door deposition on Capitol Hill. We have the next moves for both sides with our Hill and our investigative teams. And something we haven't heard from the Fed in over a year, it may be getting ready to cut interest rates and make things cheaper for you and for me, mortgages, car loans. What is driving that decision? And it really helped pop the markets today to record highs. Then a living hell. That's how one United Nations leader is describing the conditions in Gaza. That is where Hallie Jackson is today with the latest on the fighting. She's in Israel. The humanitarian crisis and families of hostages are still holding out hope that their loved ones will be released. She'll have that story. Plus a massive recall involving millions of Teslas. If you own one, it's certainly involved. Why the government says a software update is needed to make the self-driving features safe. And some surprising findings from a new study about social media and kids. What it says could actually be good for teens to post and to interact with online. Good evening. I'm Tom Costello. I'm in for Hallie, who is, as you saw, on assignment right now in Israel. And just in the last few minutes, House lawmakers have voted to formalize an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. This vote, more of a formal step than House Republicans are now taking. They believe it will help them better enforce their subpoenas and get the information they want for their investigation into what they say could be corrupt finances within the Biden family, specifically business dealings of the president's son, Hunter, and what role the president did or didn't play in them. We know the Biden administration has repeatedly called this effort to an impeachment inquiry illegitimate. Here's the White House press secretary today talking about this issue.
There's no evidence here. There's none. They're doing political stunts.
Well, that's something the GOP leaders have gotten a lot of lately. The heat is on. The fact that right now, as you heard from Sahil, they have not presented any evidence to prove misconduct by the president. A heated debate calling that out happened on the Hill earlier today. Take a listen.
Every single one of their crazy claims has been exhaustively debunked. Yet here we are,
What are my Democratic colleagues afraid of if there's nothing to see there?
So why is the MAGA wing of the Republican Party resorting to this political stunt? 2 words: Donald Trump.
Joe Biden has repeatedly lied to the American people.
The American people deserve transparency and accountability.
Well, it's all playing out as one of the key figures of this impeachment inquiry. Hunter Biden did a bit of a mea culpa today, but he also defied an order to testify behind closed doors about his business dealings. More on how that is unfolding later in the hour. Let's begin, though, with NBC's Hallie Vitale, who is on Capitol Hill. Hallie, the vote is in. House leaders are calling this a critical step for their investigation. But then there's this evidence issue, right? Or lack of evidence. How does this take that to the next level?
And that's a really important thing for us to continue to keep in mind, that right now this is kind of a solution in search of a problem. You did just see several of the committee chairmen who are leading the impeachment charge walk behind me just now, emboldened for what they would call the next phase of this ongoing investigation. These committee chairmen have been investigating the Biden family, especially through the lens of Hunter Biden, for the entire time that Republicans have had the gavel. Now today, just in the last few minutes, we watched all of their Republican colleagues say that they are ready to turn this into an official impeachment inquiry. Again, there is a thought process here on the part of Republicans that this helps to actually get them. Congressman Jordan, do you want to stop and chat for one moment? They did just finish a press conference, in fairness to them, that we were here talking to you during. But what you imagine that they said, because they've been saying this all along, is that they want to use this as a way to further bolster their subpoenas, to be able to make their power of requesting information from banks and various documents that much stronger. But the next step is also likely to be what happens with Hunter Biden. And again, I know that you're going to get into this, but the chairmen were clear today that because Hunter Biden did not show up for his deposition, Biden wanted it to be public, the committee wanted it to be behind closed doors, they will now move to try to hold him in contempt of Congress. That's likely to be one of the first actions that we end up seeing from these chairmen as they continue to try to find evidence. But again, right now, they don't have the evidence or the votes to actually make this impeachment inquiry an official impeachment.
Love how you try to get him right there live. Nice job. Listen, give us a reality check, though. You know, Sahil did this a few minutes ago, but we love having both of you there to give us your perspectives. If there were a vote today, would an impeachment vote pass in the House? Let's not even get to the Senate yet, just the House.
No, it wouldn't pass in the House. And that's why I've been so struck by the members who, even during the debate period on the House floor today, were making clear that this is not an all-out impeachment. This is an impeachment inquiry. They really were almost trying to tamp down how far they were going here, because this remains a politically thorny issue, especially in a landscape here in Congress where Republicans already have an extremely slim majority, and they have members in 17 or 18 districts now that still tipped for Biden in 2020, and that's what makes them the so-called moderates within this conference. It was difficult to get those moderates to yes on an impeachment inquiry. That took several weeks, and we're told by leadership that it stemmed from those members being able to go home and sort of temperature check their districts. But it's going to be even harder for them to actually get to yes on impeachment, and it's going to be really hard to do that and sell it to the public without actual evidence.
So real quickly, and I mean real quickly, how much of this is just a show for the Republican base?
A lot. That's the real quick answer.
Well, nicely done. This is TV. Hallie, thanks very much. Hallie Vitale, who's doing a great job on Capitol Hill, as always. As she mentioned, House Republicans are today promising to move forward with trying to punish Hunter Biden after he stood them up at a closed-door deposition on Capitol Hill this morning. The chairs of the committees involved say they will now move to bring contempt of Congress proceedings against the president's son. Take a listen.
We will begin looking at that. Both the lawyers for the Oversight Committee, the lawyers for the Judiciary Committee will move in that direction. But look, when Congress asks you to come, you're supposed to come and testify.
Well, those Republicans are reacting after Hunter Biden. He failed. He showed up on Capitol Hill, but then he failed to show up for that closed-door deposition, with Hunter insisting He wants to testify, but he wants it in public. He wants everybody to hear it out of concern that Republicans would distort his testimony if it's in private. Hunter was speaking out anyway, holding a rare press conference outside the building where lawmakers were hoping that he was going to come inside. He said nothing about this particular issue, that he said it has nothing to do with his father's problems. Take a listen to that.
My father was not financially involved in my business, not as a practicing lawyer, not as a board member of Burisma, not in my partnership with a Chinese private businessman, not in my investments at home nor abroad.
Contempt of Congress would only turn up the heat on Hunter, who faces federal tax and gun charges from 2 separate incidents and indictments in 2 different states. NBC's Tom Winter following all of this. You know, Tom, I was struck. He did do a bit of a... Tom, how much more legal hot water does defying the subpoena put him in? And, oh, by the way, some of those same members who are now suggesting he could be held in contempt, they defied subpoenas during the January 6th committee investigation last year.
Well, that's exactly right, Tom. And, you know, this issue is not something that had really come up much until the whole idea of defying subpoenas really came up in the course of that January 6th investigation. You're looking at several of them right now. Of course, we know Steve Bannon was charged as well as Peter Navarro. Ultimately, there were others that defied subpoenas, and then other arrangements were worked out or no charges were actually filed. I think it'll come down to the basic question of, is this person working with us? It's clear that Hunter Biden and his legal team are engaging in discussions, so it's not as if he was in California today surfing on the beach and just decided not to come to Washington at all. That good faith effort, at least, or at least the willingness to engage in the discussion, may be what spares him from any criminal charges in the future. But I think any discussion of that is probably a long way off, Tom.
You know, it certainly seems as if Hunter Biden has been the target of a serious criminal investigation involving the FBI. But we saw a lot of the January 6th committee's work show up in the indictments of Donald Trump. So could this investigative work on the part of the folks on Capitol Hill right now, could it end up playing into federal charges against Hunter Biden?
Well, it's a critical question, Tom, and an important one for folks to consider, because the IRS criminal investigation, the criminal division, which opened up this investigation into Hunter Biden and his taxes, they've done all the work on that. But Special Counsel David Weiss, who brought those charges, both the gun charges in Delaware, and the charges involving tax in federal court in California, he says that the investigation is ongoing. And you've got those IRS agents saying, well, we weren't able to go as far as we wanted to in our investigation. So specifically to your point, and what might make this unique, is that if Congress continues to investigate, develop information through subpoenas, gets the type of records that haven't been seen before either by the IRS or by the FBI, does then that further inform a federal criminal investigation? We have no knowledge or understanding that there is an additional step here or a piece that we're missing, but then I guess I would say we have no knowledge or any sort of background on things that we're missing because we wouldn't know about those either. So I think time will tell, Tom. This is a unique circumstance, and I think it's a reason why every time the committee comes out with new documents, we're certainly jumping into it. It'll be interesting to see if law enforcement joins in the pool, too.
Okay. Tom Winter, thank you very much. We have another big story to cover. On Wall Street, the Dow jumped to a record today on the Federal Reserve decision to leave interest rates alone after nearly 2 years of aggressive inflation fighting and its suggestion that 3 interest rate cuts could be coming, in fact, this year or next. The Dow closed above 37,000 points for the first time. The S&P and the NASDAQ both climbing over 1.3% to end the day. The current interest rate at 5.25% to 5.5% is the highest in 22 years. It was the Fed's last policy decision of the year, just one day after new data showed inflation continues to ease. NBC's Brian Chung has been on Fed Watch today. Brian, the Fed was widely expected to hold rates where they are. They did. But what about this forecast of rate cuts? That seemed to be more explicit than we expected, right? And second of all, what impact will this have on everyday Americans?
Yeah, and we heard from the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell that a lot of policymakers, he's not the only one, see the case for perhaps having already made their final interest rate hike earlier in the year. There's been a number of consecutive meetings, including this afternoon's, where they decided not to raise interest interest rates just to see how, if they keep it this high, what will that do to getting inflation down? Now you have these economic projections coming from the Federal Reserve itself forecasting the possibility of 3 interest rate cuts at some point next year. Again, those are forecasts. It depends on how the numbers come in. But this is the first real recognition since the Federal Reserve began aggressively raising interest rates that they could cut rates. Now, what does that mean for the average American? It's not directly, but it does have indirect ties to mortgage rates and then also your credit card rates, which have been at really high levels. Mortgage rates going up from 3% to 8%. But because of the state of the economy right now, having avoided a recession, the Federal Reserve is saying, well, we might be confident that we can get those rates a little bit lower and keep the trajectory of the strong economy going, Tom.
You know, what about the Fed's goal of a 2% inflation rate? I mean, we're now at about 3.1%, well below the 9% rate we had 18 months ago, but 3.1% down to 2%. Can we get there, or is the Fed starting to think we're getting close enough?
Yeah, well, again, we have to recognize that the Federal Reserve is looking at the numbers that we got yesterday as part of their marching orders to get inflation down. Unemployment looks really good. It's been hovering at around 50-year lows, but this is the number that they want to get down to 2%. You can see the improvement that we've made since last year. It actually was as high as 9% in the summer of last year. But even though it's been hovering around 3% for the past few months, there is concern within the Federal Reserve that the last mile, getting it down to their target of 2%, is going to be the hardest. That's why the Federal Reserve and Jay Powell are saying, well, we can hold rates here. We might even be able to cut them, but it depends on whether or not that figure gets down to 2%. Their projections say they could get there, but it might take a couple of years, Tom.
Real quickly, Brian, you used to work at the Fed, so I'm going to ask you this. Is that 2% goal, is it squishable? In other words, will they say, we're getting close enough to 2.5%, we're good?
Yeah, well, the way that the Federal Reserve thinks about this is that they are averaging it over time. So if they hit it 2% in one report, that might not be good enough either. They might look at a 12-month average, for example, and say, we want to see that 2% sticking around that target. But it doesn't have to be 1.8. It doesn't have to be 2.2. They want to see it averaging 2% over time.
Yeah. Brian, thank you. Brian Chung. We have a lot of news tonight. Big news. Israel is rejecting the growing pressure on the world stage to stop or at least pause the intense bombardment it is carrying out inside Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu late today vowed to fight until the very end in Gaza, as a top UN leader now says it's, quote, a living hell inside Gaza, with no food left, even for people who have money to buy it. Our team on the ground has gone inside a tent city in Gaza where thousands of people are trying to survive. One woman tells our team medicine for her elderly mother is running out with no sign of when the violence could end.
I came here. I'm trying to find these medicines for my mother. I couldn't find any one of them. I just searched every place to find it.
Back here in Washington, President Biden met privately with the families of 8 Americans held hostage by Hamas. No sign right now of if or when more hostages could be released. We want to bring in Hallie Jackson, who's on the ground in Tel Aviv. Hallie, we continue to mind the show for you back here, but what more can you tell us about any chances at all of conditions inside Gaza somehow improving? They look pretty dire right now.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. It's a great question, and we're so glad to have you in the chair there back home in Washington, especially at a time like this when so many eyes are on what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Israel. What are the chances conditions change? Listen, the weather's going to change, right? And that was a major factor over the course of the last day. We saw, and you elaborated there, but muddy, rainy conditions. People telling our team in Gaza that they were sleeping and their tents were flooded with rain. Things were overflowing. It was just miserable there on top of what is already a miserable living situation. Remember, part of the issue is that international journalists cannot get into Gaza for the most part. So there are small teams of people that are trying to bring some of these images back to the rest of the world. We also know that some international aid organizations are getting in, and they are laying out just how dire things are there. For example, the UN Palestinian refugee chief said that civil order is breaking down, describing one of his staffers who he says goes into a corner and cries 10 times a day just to be able to handle what they're seeing in some of these shelters here. You've got people, an estimated half of Gazans, who are starving, essentially, according to these aid organizations, and more than 80% of them are displaced. They are out of their homes at this point. You talk about the international effort to try to get more aid to Gaza, more food, more medicine. You heard that woman talking there, more water. The IDF says roughly in the last few days, 200 or so aid trucks have gotten across the border into Gaza. Gazan officials, the Hamas-run ministry there, says they need something like 1,000 trucks to be getting in. So that is part of the distinction that you're seeing here, part of the difference as to why people are sounding the alarm about what's happening in Gaza. Tom, with an estimated 18,000 Gazans killed since this war began, according to that Hamas-run health ministry. We know that more than, or just right around 2,000 Israelis were killed in that terror attack just underneath.
Can I ask you, since you're on the ground there in Tel Aviv, you know, there's all this international pressure to come to some sort, to resume the peace talks, or come to a pause and resume the talks to try to get the hostages out. Is that going to happen? I mean, it seems like you've got Hamas and Israel both absolutely willing to go all the way to the end on this. Is there any real serious movement on the ground there to resume peace talks and go try to find hostages, at least have Hamas bring them out?
Right. Right. Real serious movement, Tom. That's a good way to put it. Real serious movement, no, right? Because there really hasn't been concrete steps, at least not publicly. We know that obviously there are conversations happening all the time behind the scenes that we may not be privy to, but there really hasn't been the kind of public signaling that we saw prior to the first temporary truce and the ceasefire that allowed those hostages to be released. Now, that said, we may, let's talk again tomorrow, right? And the next day and the next day and the next day, because the situation can certainly change here on the ground. You have the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, from the Biden administration coming into Israel later on this week. You've got the Defense Secretary traveling to the region, set to meet with the Qataris as well. There are conversations. The Qataris have been so critical in these truce talks and have said just this week that they do want to continue to push forward on a diplomatic resolution, even though right now it does seem like those talks are at a standstill. Listen, it's part of why you are seeing hostage family members continue to try to shine a light on what's happening. They don't want this to fall to the back burner. Some of them were talking about this with President Biden after that meeting with President Biden at the White House today. Let me play for you some of what we heard back home where you are in Washington.
They are just not numbers, and they're just not faces. They are sons. They are sons. They are grandparents. They are mothers. And that is what the president and his team understand.
The urgency here, not just because, as you heard some of those hostage family members say, they are desperately hoping for some kind of a Christmas miracle, but because of real concerns about the health of some of those hostages who are still believed to be held in Gaza. Tom, later in the show, you're going to hear from one hostage family member who says her sister was shot, and she is very concerned that her sister's not getting the help that she needs right now while in captivity, Tom.
Hallie, given the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu, that the war cabinet is pursuing aggressively this war in Gaza, is the feeling in Israel that they have now given up on or written off the hostages, that they think that they're casualties of war and they've got to move on and press this war?
I think the people that we talk to, the hostage family members, are continuing to put such pressure on continuing to talk about this all the time. They have to be hopeful. I mean, that's what I've heard from several of them, that if they're not hopeful for a ceasefire, for some kind of a truce, then how can they even wake up in the morning, right? How can they even get out of bed? I will say that it is clear, we know publicly at least of 2 rescue operations that the Israeli military tried to pursue to release hostages. Only one of them was successful, and it ended in the release of 1 hostage, right? We saw dozens of hostages released in the temporary ceasefire, which perhaps is an indication that that is the way that you're going to get these people out, Tom. Obviously, though, the Israeli military is continuing to pummel the Gaza Strip. You heard just today, late today, in a briefing, an assessment with Special Operations Forces, the Prime Minister say that they are going to continue down this path and show the world that they can win.
Hallie, thank you. We're lucky to have you there, and we'll check back with you later in this hour. Other news from us now. A new report just out today is offering a sort of toolkit for parents on how to make social media a helpful spot, maybe not all harmful, in fact, for teens. The National Academy of Sciences study highlights what we know, that social media can be bad for kids. But what's interesting here, it also shows it can be good if done in a positive manner. For example, scrolling is connected to comparing yourself to others, which may not be healthy. But posting about hobbies or creative projects can be good, giving teens a place to express and showcase what interests them. We bring in NBC News tech correspondent Jake Ward for more on this. Jake, as you and I have discussed, this is interesting because parents like you and like me, we worry that, we don't want our kids to fall into this to the cesspool online. And yet there is a way to do this right?
That's right. I mean, there does seem to be some suggestion in this survey of, 15 years of social science, more than 60 meta-analyses of hundreds and hundreds of studies. There's some sign inside it that there are steps we could be taking. I mean, when you look across the top takeaways of this, it's really clear that there's quite a bit one can do to fight the negative effects, that posting as opposed to just passive scrolling, as you say, can be better for some kids. And the big one here is, of course, that the reason they don't go so far as to really say, here are some hard and fast rules for parents, is that we need new industry standards for transparency around data, Tom.
All right, but it's awfully tough to keep a middle schooler or a high schooler, first of all, off social media, or second of all, to kind of corral them into the social media that you think is healthy for them, right? So what should we do? What should parents be doing?
Well, basically, parents are told that at the youngest ages, they should be very actively being shoulder to shoulder with their kid. If they're going to let their kid look at social media, you and I should really be using it to literally guide them through it. Maybe you save a bunch of posts to show them, with them. But as you get into the teenage years, when you use removing social media or taking away a phone, let's say, as punishment, that turns out to push teenagers into more and more dangerous behavior, the kind of stuff you wouldn't want. And the reason we care, of course, right, is that a third of teens report using the top social media platforms almost constantly, while nearly half of teens use the internet almost constantly. About 95% of teenagers right now are estimated to have a smartphone, Tom. This is a thing that they're absolutely saying they need to keep studying.
It's a part of life. You just got to manage it, I guess. Jake, thank you very much. Coming up from us, new warnings about accidental poisonings potentially related to weight loss injections, how the maker of some drugs is now responding to our team tonight. That's coming up next. Plus, if you want to plan your trip to the 2027 Super Bowl, the NFL just decided where it's going to be. More on that in our 5 things. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, and some interesting Netflix news. It's now releasing a new engagement report for the first time ever, in part to address criticism about the company's lack of transparency on how content is doing on the platform. The goal, execs say, it's to give creators and Hollywood more insight into the audience about what people are and are not watching. And what we're seeing, Netflix's original show, The Night Agent, beats all other shows with more than 812 million viewing hours. Not far behind that, other Netflix originals like Season 2 of Ginny and Georgia, South Korean thriller The Glory, Wednesday, and Queen Charlotte. CNBC's Alex Sherman is joining us now. Alex, the issue of transparency on viewership data was something that came up during the Hollywood strikes this year, because creators wanted to get paid more fairly based on how audience engagement was going on with their content, right? So what are we learning now about the Netflix viewers report?
Yeah, this is not a panacea. What this report tells you is what shows were most popular between January of 2023 and June of 2023. But it is a step in the right direction in terms of data released, not only for creators, but for fans of Netflix, for the press that covers Netflix, for advertisers. Netflix now has an advertiser tier. And as you mentioned, part of what motivates this is Netflix's reputation for being not all that transparent with data. It kind of runs counter to Netflix's culture, which is one of radical transparency. Take a listen to what Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos told reporters in a press conference about this yesterday.
Lack of data, that lack of transparency, the unintended consequence was this kind of mistrust, this environment of mistrust around the data. I think it creates a better environment for the guilds, for us, for the producers, for creators, and for the press.
So they're being transparent. That's interesting. But in its release, Netflix says that the viewing hours don't always paint the whole picture, I understand, right? And the success comes in all shapes and sizes. The company says it's all about how content thrills audiences, but how do you measure thrills?
Yeah, this is like an episode of a Netflix show, Black Mirror, which, by the way, I looked at the list. It's like top 50 or 60 in that period.
I got to write that down, Black Mirror. Okay.
Right, yeah, you just need to insert a chip inside you, and then you can measure your thrill ratio. No, look, your point is well taken. There's no real way to measure thrill, but there are other ways to measure other things beyond just total amount of hours, which is what this report says. For instance, you can look at social media engagement, or you can look at Google searches, or even you can look at other metrics maybe in terms of what advertisers care about. Just because a show is seen for X amount of hours doesn't necessarily mean that that is the best show. So there are many ways of looking at this. This is just one data point that Netflix will now release. And look, it is a step in the right direction toward transparency.
And you still have the family debates about what's good and what's not good. Alex, thank you very much for that report. Other news, kind of Hollywood related. Oprah Winfrey reveals today she uses a weight loss drug as part of her new approach to maintain a healthy diet. She says, well, she's not going to tell us which drug. In an exclusive interview with People, Winfrey says, I now use it as I feel I need it, as a tool to manage not yo-yoing. She says she used it before Thanksgiving. So in her words, instead of gaining 8 pounds like I did last year, I gained half a pound. And it quiets the food noise. And it's not just that she still maintains a holistic mindset, she says, eating her last meal at 4 o'clock and drinking a gallon of water a day. And she says she uses the Weight Watchers principles of counting points. We want to bring in right now NBC's Valerie Castro for more. Valerie, Oprah's weight has been heavily scrutinized for decades. So why does she now decide she needs to come out? What was behind her decision to talk about this?
So, Tom, in making this decision, Oprah says she had to overcome a lot of shame, and she also had to overcome the idea that she was somehow cheating herself because she wasn't able to do this through willpower alone. In the interview, she says the fact that there is a medically approved prescription for managing weight and staying healthier in my lifetime feels like relief, like redemption, like a gift, and not something to hide behind and once again be ridiculed for. I'm absolutely done with the shaming from other people, and particularly myself. And Tom, as you noted, this is not the only thing that she is doing. This is just part of a larger plan as far as diet and exercise, as well as using this as a tool to maintain that healthy weight.
You know, back in September, she called the drugs an easy way out, and now she seems to have kind of changed her mind, right? So how does this kind of represent the evolving industry and acceptance for using these drugs? I mean, if Oprah is doing it, it must be safe. I'm hearing people think that right now.
Right. So Oprah also addressed this directly in the interview. She said, I realized I'd been blaming myself all these years for being overweight, and I have a predisposition that no amount of willpower is going to control. Now, she has embraced that, as well as Weight Watchers, and we know that she is a longtime spokesperson for the company. She's been a member of the board since 2015. She's also an investor. And earlier this year, Weight Watchers made headlines when they acquired a digital health company called Sequence. Now, that's a subscriber-based plan. It gives people the option to have access to clinical providers, to nutrition experts, to fitness experts, as well as medical experts that can prescribe some of these weight loss drugs like Wegovy and Ozempic. And Weight Watchers, the CEO spoke to CNN in an interview earlier this year saying, look, they've come around to the idea that this is a holistic approach, that it can't just be willpower and a traditional diet that helps people. Some people need medical help as well. And take a listen to what she had to say.
So I want to be the first to say I'm sorry. And we know better now. We will do better now. For many who are living with obesity, it's a chronic condition, and therefore it is not a choice. We've been treating these medications like it's a vanity, and it's not. It's life-saving.
And Tom, for a lot of people, the hope is that this becomes a sustainable way of managing weight. Tom?
You know, when Oprah Winfrey, who is so successful, says, I didn't have the willpower to overcome the cravings, that allows them to say, all right, if Oprah's going to use the medications, maybe I can too. This is really insightful and helpful. Valerie, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we have more weight loss drug news right now, as we're getting alarming data right now from the U.S. Poison Center. It has seen nearly 3,000 calls this year involving the medicine and weight loss drug injections, and that number is 15 times more than what it reported in 2019. Novo Nordisk, the maker of the approved drug, said in a statement to NBC News that patient safety is a top priority, and it is taking multiple steps to ensure responsible use of its semaglutide medicines. We want to bring in our medical contributor, Dr. Kavita Patel, for this. We always turn to you on this kind of stuff. What could be causing so many of these accidental poisonings?
Yeah, Tom, over the last year, we've seen a 500% rise in the use of this.
500% rise?
500% rise in the use of these weight loss drugs, because studies after study have shown that they're effective, especially in certain populations. But there are different dosages, different pens, and people are really trying to use as much of this drug as they can, especially if they have to pay out of pocket for this. So they're stretching out the medicine longer. And there's also false kind of fake pharmacies that advertise and get people to pay them, give them a drug that might not be the right dosage, and they could unintentionally take the wrong dose.
How does one know if they've overdosed on these drugs?
Yeah, great question. So number one, I always make sure people get it from a reliable pharmacy. If you don't, that should be a tip-off. You might not want to use that drug. But then second, symptoms that we can see in patients are everything that's from nausea, vomiting, lightheadedness, some stomach pain, heart palpitations, feeling like you're just off is a good sign that you should put the pen down. It's a weekly injection usually. Put it away and try to concentrate on going to see a doctor and getting attention, getting your blood drawn, seeing what's going on.
Real quickly, are each of these pens or the prescriptions, are they unique to each individual, the dosage?
The dosage is prescribed for the individual, but the pens themselves come in these different formulations. But again, you can use a certain number of clicks. I've seen online sites that actually teach people how to stretch out a dosage.
Really?
So, Tom, you might get a prescribed dose from me each week, but if you're trying to get that pen to last 3 months instead of 1 month, you use a certain number of clicks. And this is all over Reddit forums, all over the internet. So people are trying to help each other, but unintentionally hurting the situation.
Interesting. Talk to your doctor.
Yeah,
right.
Right. Stick to the dose.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. We appreciate it. We want to get you over now to the 5 things, our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the father of the accused Highland Park shooter was released from jail today. Remember, Robert Primo Jr. pleaded guilty last month to 7 counts of reckless conduct for helping his son purchase a gun. In exchange, he was sentenced to about 2 months in jail and probation, but he only ended up serving less than a month because of good behavior. Number 2, federal prosecutors say they will retry a former police officer charged in the raid that killed Breonna Taylor. It comes about a month after a judge declared a mistrial when the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict on civil rights violations. Brett Hankinson is accused of using excessive force when he blindly fired 10 shots into Taylor's apartment. A trial date is set for next October. Hankinson could face up to life in prison if convicted. Number 3, NFL owners voted today to have Super Bowl 61 in, drumroll please, Los Angeles. In 2027, the city hosted last year's Super Bowl as well. The decision is contributing to LA's massive sports presence. World Cup games will be there in 2026, and the Summer Olympics set for 2028. Number 4, the National Film Registry announced 25 movies it has picked for preservation this year. Home Alone made the list, and so did Apollo 13, 12 Years a Slave, and the animated classic Lady and the Tramp. Number 5, Doritos has a new product, and no, it's not chips, it is alcohol. Doritos and the drink company Empirical released a new liqueur that actually tastes, they say, just like the nacho cheese snack. Yum! The 750 milliliter bottle is on sale in New York and California for $65. Gonna rush right out. When we come back, a change at the Vatican. Pope Francis says he wants to do something that hasn't happened in more than a century. More on that later in the Global. All right, we're going back overseas now. NBC's Hallie Jackson is getting a close-up look at a plaza in Tel Aviv, now called Hostage Square, where people are gathering, holding out hope more hostages could be released, as the diplomatic push to make that happen still appears stalled tonight. Hallie is back with us right now. Hallie?
Hey, Tom, it's great to see you. One of the things that is striking when you visit this location is the way that it has become a gathering spot for family members of hostages, for people in Israel, in Tel Aviv, affected by the war to come, and to be with other people who are feeling this moment, too. Take a look. A near constant vigil next to pictures of the killed or kidnapped, as this has become a gathering place. This is the plaza in front of the Tel Aviv Art Museum, but people here now call this place Hostage Square. At the center, an empty Shabbat table. Nearby, a menorah for Hanukkah, a holiday celebrating a miracle with so many hoping for one soon.
I feel like they're my family.
Like Yarden Gonen, showing us to a dark tent filled with pictures of people who'd been at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th.
You can see also my sunshine here. This is Romy, my beautiful sister, one of them.
Romy's believed to be held captive in Gaza, along with dozens of others, including multiple Americans, some of their families, meeting with President Biden at the White House today. If you could be there to speak on behalf of your sister, what would you tell him?
First of all, that she is my loved sister. This is what's important right now, to fight for their life, for the living. And I believe in him. I believe in his power. And we all know that he got the leverage on Qatar, on Egypt, on Israel to change the way things are right now. And I'm seeking for his help. And I know we all are. Especially the families that they have citizenship in the United States, but also us.
Gonen says other now freed hostages told them her sister's alive, but hurt after being shot in the hand. The push to get her home so urgent. It's now Gonen's full-time job.
I'm very afraid that the ones that holding her are a group of terrorists that want to use her and another women and men that over there as a war weapon. And I can only hope that she's okay mentally, and I feel her here. Yeah. I want to feel her here, please.
One of the things about that place that we just showed you, Hostage Square, on Saturday nights, there is a bigger vigil, and there are so many people. There are hundreds of people. There's video screens, and the last couple of Saturdays, in fact, since those hostages that Gonen just referenced have been released, you've actually heard some video testimonials from them. These people who had been in captivity now speaking about that experience, and perhaps most importantly, as they emphasize, delivering the message, please get the others out. That is such a focus for these folks, Tom.
That was such a compelling and a personal interview. You've covered this war, of course, from here, from the anchor chair in Washington since it started. Yeah. Talk about what it's like now to be on the ground and to be there firsthand in Tel Aviv.
I will say, Tom, just putting on sort of my D.C. hat as well, one of the things that's been striking as a sort of political correspondent coming in now to cover this war in Israel, between Israel and Hamas, is the way that so many Israelis that we've talked to are incredibly engaged with what's happening in the D.C. political landscape, incredibly engaged with everything that President Biden is saying, where Secretary of State Tony Blinken is, when are these visits happening by top U.S. officials to this region, because I think there are people here who have said to me they feel like the U.S. has a lot of power in this situation. I think you heard Yarden, who you see here now next to me, talk about that, too, in our interview here, the idea that the U.S. could potentially have some leverage here in trying to get people to the negotiating table in order to try to come up with some kind of a temporary truce, another one to get some of these hostages freed. So that has been one of the striking things here. I'm also looking ahead to what's going to happen later this week, Tom, when we expect to see President Biden's top national security official, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, come here to Israel to talk with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to talk with members of the Unity War Cabinet. Interestingly, he's also in Saudi, and what we have heard now from our colleagues over on our White House team is that Sullivan is really trying to make the case that this should not escalate into a broader regional conflict, trying to make sure that this war doesn't escalate even further in the region. And Tom, as you well know, that has been one of the concerns since almost the minute this war began.
Yeah. Hallie, we'll be back with you at the top of the hour. Thank you very much. Great reporting. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories each day, and here are some of the things that our teams are keeping an eye on. We call this segment The Global. In Ukraine, the mayor of Kyiv says a Russian missile attack this morning hurt more than 50 people. 20 of them had to be hospitalized. Authorities there say falling debris damaged dozens of buildings, too. The country has also been dealing with a huge phone and internet outage, which authorities say is because of a Russian cyber attack. From the Vatican, Pope Francis says he wants to simplify the funeral rites for future popes, and that he does not want to be buried inside Vatican City. He turns 87 in just a few days, and he says he prefers to be buried in a basilica in Rome, where he frequently goes to pray. The last pope to be buried outside the Vatican was Leo XIII, who died more than a century ago. And in the Netherlands, 2 tiny paintings by the Dutch master Rembrandt are finally back on display after nearly 200 years in a private collection. The Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam unveiling those today. They're on a long-term loan from the wealthy Dutch family who bought the paintings at auction earlier this year. The Rijks, my Dutch-speaking wife would say. We'll watch that closely. Coming up from us, a scandal surrounding a big political couple in Florida, rocking the state's GOP as well. We're getting into the blowback on our original tonight. Okay, we're back. We want to bring you today's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on here. Tonight, a sex scandal involving and engulfing one of Florida's most powerful political couples and really rocking the state GOP. One half of that powerful couple, the chair of Florida's Republican Party, now faces allegations of sexual battery. The other half, his wife, who co-founded the influential parents group Moms for Liberty, serves on a Sarasota school board. Both refused to step down. NBC's Noah Pransky has the story.
Outrage, both outside.
She has turned this school board into a circus.
And inside.
It is the distraction du jour.
A Sarasota County School Board meeting with critics calling for the resignation of board member and co-founder of Moms for Liberty, Bridget Ziegler.
The resolution recommends that Bridget Ziegler immediately take all steps necessary to voluntarily resign.
The non-binding vote passed.
I am disappointed.
Ziegler did not resign. But why is this such a big deal? Ziegler co-founded Moms for Liberty, a parents group aggressively pushing for more conservative policies in schools, including bans on some books and lessons related to certain race, gender, and sexuality issues. She's also married to the chair of the Republican Party of Florida, Christian Ziegler, who now faces allegations of sexual battery, including rape. But Bridget isn't accused of any legal wrongdoing.
The blowback is generally for her been sort of steeped in the idea that she's being a hypocrite, and that is because the allegations of the sex scandal are that there was a threesome, and a threesome that involves another woman.
The Florida Center for Government Accountability first reported the alleged rape described in a search warrant affidavit. It details what was supposed to be a consensual three-way encounter that included Bridget. But it says when Bridget canceled, Christian went to the victim's house anyway. Sarasota police have not confirmed or denied the authenticity of the detailed affidavit, which has been widely reported. But last month, police provided NBC News a heavily redacted report mentioning rape and sexual battery when asked for a complaint filed against Ziegler. Christian Ziegler's lawyer says Sarasota police are investigating, but his client is innocent. Ziegler has not been charged. Bridget Ziegler, meanwhile, who did not return NBC News' request for comment, has tried to conduct business as usual these last few weeks.
I serve on another public board, and this issue did not come up, and we were able to forge ahead with the business of the board.
But the scandal has rocked the Florida GOP, with some calling on Governor Ron DeSantis to use his executive power to remove Bridget from boards.
And it's had some huge political ripple effects here that the party is still figuring out how to kind of deal with.
Moms for Liberty says Bridget stepped down as co-founder years ago, but, quote, has remained an avid warrior for parental rights, adding that the allegations against Christian should be fully investigated. DeSantis, who endorsed Bridget for the Sarasota School Board, has not yet commented on whether she should resign, but publicly urged her husband to step down as party chair. Now, some of the state's top Republicans have called an emergency meeting this weekend to discuss potential disciplinary actions against him. With neither Ziegler indicating any plans to step down, the future remains in limbo, both for this power couple and the Republican Party of Florida.
Noah Pransky joins us now. Noah, I was in Sarasota this weekend. It is the talk. It is the talk in Sarasota. And you said the future is in limbo. So what are the next steps here?
So for Mr. Ziegler, the Republican Party of Florida can remove him, but it won't be quick. It will take several meetings and procedures. As for Mrs. Ziegler, she can be removed using executive power from the governor. He has not yet indicated if he would, but she doesn't just serve on the Sarasota School Board. She also serves on the new Disney Oversight Board. She was personally appointed by the governor. However, she has not been accused or charged. So right now, we're just waiting. Tom?
Right. Noah, thank you very much. Noah Pransky. Coming up from us now, a terrifying moment, all caught on video of the aftermath of a shark attack. The latest on this man's injuries and what paramedics in Australia are telling NBC News. That's next. You know, fear of a shark attack, it's almost universal among beachgoers. This won't help. Frightening video of a 20-year-old being attacked by a shark on an Australian beach. And we want to warn you, the video is tough to watch. Here's that man filming what he says he thought would be his final moments as he is losing a lot of blood and getting dragged out of the water. He was bitten so badly, his leg had to be partially amputated. NBC's Sam Brock has the story.
Terrifying footage shows the seconds after a 20-year-old got attacked by a shark that ended with him losing a leg below his knee. You can hear the panic in his voice and that of his friend, who he says saved his life, dragging him back onto shore. Matteo Mariotti, an Italian student studying abroad, posting on social media over the weekend that he recorded that footage because he wanted to say goodbye. It happened on Friday on a beach in Queensland in northeastern Australia. Mariotti was on a trip there to work and study. He told an Italian newspaper from his hometown of Parma that he tried to open the shark's mouth and even with difficulty freed his leg, even though he says he knew that from the knee down, there was nothing left. In the aftermath of the attack, Mariotti says his friend applied a tourniquet.
In the first seconds, it was really panic for me. And after that, I tried to think what I have to do. And I tried just my best to save him.
Paramedics then telling NBC News the wounds were serious and daunting to look at. Just days before this terrible incident, someone else sharing this video of the area where the shark attacked Mariotti, writing that the water is, quote, full of fish and sharks. You can see some of their fins there in the water. Unprovoked shark attacks gaining international attention over the last week following 2 people dying in rare encounters. One woman killed in Mexico and another in the Bahamas. This year, there have been at least 17 unprovoked shark attacks just in Australia. Globally, there have been 95 unprovoked attacks. For the most part, shark attacks haven't gone up significantly in recent years, but experts say that sharks' behavior could be changing due to climate change, making ocean waters warmer. That's causing the animals they eat to move, so sharks are moving along with them, sometimes to places where a lot more people happen to be. Matteo has been flooded with messages of support from all over the world, including from an amputee who says that he is still able to live his life like any able-bodied person. Matteo saying he is just grateful right now to be alive. In Miami, Sam Brock, NBC News. Back to you.
All right, Sam, thank you very much. That is a wrap for us at this hour and for the one before it. Top Story picks up the coverage on News Now right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.